And I'm really excited for this next fight. Vinicius Salvador taking on Victor Altamirano. They might not be the biggest names, but you definitely should tune in for this fight if you don't know who these guys are. They're both really creative, fun strikers to watch. And Vinicius Salvador, this is going to be his UFC debut. He's had 2 fights fall through since joining the UFC, so hopefully they could make this one happen. And overall, he's 14-4. He earned his contract by knocking out Shannon Ross in the Contender Series, who he recently saw fight in the UFC against Klidson Rodriguez and get knocked out again. So wasn't a great victory, but he's on a 4-fight winning streak. And his one loss in that run came against Jafel Filo, who just almost took out Muhammad Makayev. So, or arguably did take him out, whichever side you are on that tap controversy. But you know, yeah, Filo's the real deal, so that's not a bad loss. And you also have to note that 2 of the opponents he beat, though, during this 4-fight winning streak were 0-0, which to me is a little bit alarming. I don't like seeing fighters with so much experience, well over 10 fights, 15 fights, taking these type of fights, because to me it shows a mental weakness. And I think even if it's Salvador, or not Salvador necessarily asking for these type of low-level matchups, if it's whoever is handling him, they have to have more confidence, I believe, and test him against tough competition to forge him through that fire for the UFC, because this isn't like boxing, man. They're going to have him in there fighting Beast right away, and he's going to be in there with Altamirano, who's definitely going to be up for the task. And we're going to see if Salvador is going to sink or swim here now that he's in the UFC, but he's taking on the LFA Kingpin, the guy with the most title defenses in LFA history, Victor Altamirano, who got into the UFC win column for the first time in his last fight. He's had 2 UFC fights so far, and he had a split decision loss in his debut, and he took the judges out of the equation in the second fight, went in there, got the first round knockout, so he's looking to build on that, work towards the rankings, and every guy at 125 is tough, so this is going to be another fun fight. And he's going to be bolstered and confident by the recent successes of other Mexican UFC stars, 3 champs now, and he's going to be ready to bring the action. He's coming out of Texas, and obviously it's going to be a lot of Mexicans in the crowd as well, so he's going to have the crowd on his side, and we're going to see if that helps him win this fight. But he has a really fun striking style to watch, Altamirano. He's tall, long, and rangy. This fight, he's going to be an inch taller, but he's going to have the same reach as his opponent, so he's not going to have that same advantage that he usually has. He likes to hold his hands low. He switches stances a lot. Has great head movement. He uses a Philly shell defense. Really good eyes. And his speed is great. I mean, he throws a variety of kicks. There's real nice combinations. Body, head, legs. Stays really active. And he does a good job finishing a lot of combinations with kicks. He landed a nasty knee in the middle of a combination in his last fight that basically ended the fight. It dropped his opponent, and he ended up finishing with ground and pound shortly after. And he has fast hands. He closes the gap quickly. He, on the inside, will rip the body, the head. He throws good combinations. And he has the volume edge in this fight, but he's definitely at the power disadvantage, so he has to stay defensively responsible. And he tends to start a little bit slow. He gets dropped early in a couple of fights that I've seen. So, he has to be a little bit sharper than that, because Salvador is one of these few guys at 125 that can actually knock you out with one shot. And when Altamirano gets into the fight, though, he does fight very composed. He has a good fight IQ. He's never been finished. And obviously, that tells you he has a good chin, good durability, comes in good shape. And he still has to be aware of the power, though, as Salvador has 13 knockouts. But I think once he gets in the fight and starts feeling the rhythm, he's going to show real good head movement, evasiveness, and it's going to be a fun fight where both these guys are probably going to be pretty hard to hit. And Vinicius Salvador, he's kind of similar. He's a tall counter striker. He likes to get in, get out, and he starts fast. 10 of his 14 wins have ended in the first round, and he's 13-1 in fights that have ended in the first. And he's only 5-3 in fights that have gone past round 1, so he doesn't really have a good track record in fights that have gone past the first round. And only 2 fights that he's had have went to round 3. He's 1-1 in those fights. And so obviously extending Salvador is definitely something that opponents in the UFC are going to want to try to do. On the feet, he stands really tall, so he could throw kicks, move in and out quickly. He'll pressure, flash that rear hand and then use the head movement, pull counters. Rear cross is fast, accurate. He closes the gap quickly, and sometimes you go first with some 1-2s, 3-2s, uppercut 2s, but usually likes to counter. On the inside, or when he can back someone up, he will get wild, and he likes to brawl in the pocket. If he connect, he could put someone's lights out, but he can also get countered. His last fight, he landed some big left hooks that ended up finishing the fight, and he's a showman. You'll see him taunt guys to try to goad them into war so he can land that, flashy counter knockout. Stylistically, these two guys match up great. It should be a really fun fight. But wrestling and grappling for Salvador is, to me, a little bit questionable. Like I said, he can get wild, and with his stance, standing really tall, he does let fighters get inside and take him down, and I've seen him get taken down off of kicks as well. Off of his back, he does use his reach and length to kind of threaten and stay active enough where he can kind of nullify his opponent, but he doesn't have a big submission threat, sweep threat, or great get-up game, and he hasn't really faced that many great grapplers. If I'm Victor Altamirano, my game plan would be to attack the legs and body and then try to force the clinch, hit some takedowns, try to avoid exchanging. And if Altamirano can use his speed, kicks on the outside, and then be able to get inside, use the clinch, work those knees, maybe hit a body lock or two, I think you'll start to see him take over the fight, and you'll start to see Salvador get a little bit tired. And Salvador's going to have to pressure, try to make it more of a war. He has the power advantage, and if he can get Altamirano to exchange with him, he is the slicker counterpuncher. We saw Victor Altamirano get dropped in the first round in his last fight with the rear cross, so obviously Salvador has that same ability. And I believe that Altamirano has more ways to win. He already has 2 UFC fights to Salvador's 0. More experience in long fights. He's been in 5-round fights. He's never been finished. And he's probably going to be able to navigate the danger, use his evasiveness, his speed, his kicks to get Salvador to go first more, and then land counters, takedowns of his own. And I'll say Altamirano wins a decision here, but I wouldn't be shocked if Altamirano finishes him late either. And I think that Altamirano inside the distance is a decent play, and I think Altamirano, if he gets a plus money, is a decent bet as well. So I'm going with Victor Altamirano in this one, and I'll say that he wins by decision.